While there are certainly tracks that have been raced in this series that have a reputation for chaos, none seem to hold a candle to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. A look at the track layout doesn't make it appear particularly threatening or problematic, yet once you introduce all three classes to the pavement, things suddenly erupt. No doubt the drivers will be approaching it with caution today as we get ready to watch round 9 of the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth today is Cy Andra and DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Motorsport is a rare circuit in today's world of racing. Let's head to our track guide to find out what makes it so unique. Welcome to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, or as most fans know it, Motorsport. This circuit to the northeast of Toronto is a rarity in the world of racing today. Safety standards and the desire for more overtaking opportunities has caused most tracks to alter their layouts over the years. But Motorsport is still exactly the same footprint as it was when it was built in 1961. A mere 11 turns, most of which are high-speed sweepers, are dispersed among 2.5 miles or just shy of 4 kilometers. The only alterations to the turns have been to the runoff areas, but otherwise the radii, camber, and elevation changes are all untouched. Because cars have continued to get faster through the passage of time, it's made this place a fearsome beast to tackle. Clayton Corner is particularly notorious. The blind crest and steep plunge combined with incredibly high speeds to create a punishing combination. Without many heavy braking zones, passing is often difficult. And other than using the slipstream up the Mario Andretti Straight, the only other option is usually Moss Corner. This double apex hairpin is named after Sir Sterling Moss for his suggestion to redesign it after he saw its initial layout. While the plateau-like middle portion and critical exit onto the backstretch certainly give it plenty of character, the heavy compression at the bottom of the hill that causes a frighteningly short braking zone makes this one not for the faint of heart. Formula One, USAC, and IMSA have all taken their turns here, but recently NASCAR has joined the fray by holding a round for the Truck Series. Old school fans can rejoice for the enduring popularity of this bastion of untouched tarmac, but any motorsports enthusiast can't help but smile at the thrill Motorsport continues to provide. Well, for all of the fearsome troubles that it has given drivers over the seasons, we have a new car in the mix compared to previous seasons here in this series. DJ, so how do you think it's going to play now that we have the LMP2 involved instead?
Well, Joe, truthfully, I think it's going to make everything a little bit more chaotic. One of the things that makes this LMP2 so spectacular is its amount of downforce, its ability to whip through these corners at maximum speed. And with a lot of the high-speed corners at Motorsport, that's going to make them so much faster as compared to the other classes out on the track. The narrow nature of the track is going to make that overtaking through the multi-class field, as we talked about, very, very difficult. Even when it's the wide open throttle sections, though, it's a very narrow track, so drivers are going to have to be very, very careful. Keep an eye out. There are going to be traffic jams after traffic jams going into Moss and down into White's Corner at the end of the lap. Down in the GTs, it's going to be especially difficult to get those heavy cars slowed down a little bit more. They'll be able to use the uphill of Moss Corner to help brake the cars, but getting the trail braking right can be a little bit tricky. It's really, really a circuit, no matter which of these three cars you're in, is incredibly difficult to get right, but it is one of the circuits that feels the best when you know you've nailed the perfect lap.
Well, right now they're trying to nail the perfect lap, but before we get to covering the prototypes out there qualifying, let's take a look at our championship, starting with the prototype class itself. Now, as you look at these, you see Williams at the top with DeVries 7 behind. Now, With Darling in third, it looks like that's going to be a close fight, but we'll talk about this more later. Darling has had to switch classes, which means essentially he'll no longer be a part of this battle in the Prototype Championship, though he will be fighting for the team's championship for that same DMG United team. Josh Wolf, a little bit far back, has not been all that consistent. Billy Smith as well. Just need to finish a little bit higher and get more, better, faster results, I guess you could say. Cy, what about the GT Pros?
Well, surprisingly, it's just as close in the top two, but the third place card drops off a little bit further back than the prototypes. Kevin Binkley is your series leader at the moment in the GT Pro with 137 points. Ross Booth has been tailing him very closely throughout the entire season, only 7 points back, and they've been trading wins and second places basically the entire season. The only reason Ross is this far back is because of his poor finish at Road America, but he's looking to fix that today. Behind him in third is Christopher Pies, a little bit too far back, I think, this deep into the season. We are 9 rounds in out of 14. But he is in a very close fight for that podium position in the championship with Marc-Antoine Thibault and Oliver Turcotte nipping at his heels. And for the GTM classifications, let's go to DJ.
Thanks, Cy. And as you can see, Ryan Wash holding a very narrow lead. They're only 12 points over Joey Atterbury, and that is a result of Wash's absolutely stellar run over the past couple of races. In the past 4 races, he has had 3 wins and a second, so absolutely untouchable. Atterbury's going to have to get back on the top of his game to try to challenge him. Looking back into third, Kevin Santana had an absolute mega start to the year, scoring 2 wins and 5 podiums in the first 5 races. He has had a run of very, very unlucky races as of recently. Behind him in fourth, Ryan Robertson, little bit of an inconsistent showing. He's picked up 2 wins on the year, but his other races have been very, very rough performances. And then behind him, you do have a tie with Rhodes and Schmidt trying to challenge Robertson for that 4th place.
And finally, we have the Teams Championship. Now, the way they do this in this series is the teams have a driver, 1 in each class, although they are allowed 4 drivers per team, so they have a backup, but only 3 score in each round. Now, DMG United is leading, and you see Darling is on that team. So that's why they found it so imperative, even though he's 3rd in the points, that he swapped down to the GT Pros so that he can help, just because they have unfortunately fallen out of the ability to use one of their GT drivers. So they kind of had to plug that hole, if you will. VRS Satellite Racing just a mere 19 points behind. When you're dealing with a team's championship, that is a very narrow margin. From there, it jumps back to Lap Rats Racing, who are split by less than 10 points with Autobahn East. And then it is a much bigger gap down to Autobahn North, with Smith, Park, Rhodes, and Perry carrying them along. Cy, I believe you've also got the race details in case we got some new viewers here today.
Well, it's a classic Autobahn race, 60 minutes of flat-out sprint racing, basically multi-class here. 24 incident limit, which might come into play here at Motorsport, especially with how tight the classes are going to be. Lapping is going to be very, very quick here, especially with how much downforce these LMP2 cars, with what DJ was talking about. This means they're going to lap those GT cars a lot, and that means lots of opportunities for contact and that multi-class struggles that we were kind of hinting at. No spare car adding on to that, so the drivers will have to pit if they pick up damage and they get that dreaded meatball flag. And remember, in iRacing, the exit of turn 2 still has a grass out there, so if they bobble or even have a little bit of a slip up at turn 2, they're going to find themselves heading towards that tire barrier in the background really quickly. And the race is going to start at 2 p.m. virtual standard time, which means the track is going to be hot as well, not helping with that. Now, you can see a lot of rubber down on the track, but I think that's going to hurt the drivers, especially as it heats up and kind of makes it all sort of wishy-washy, especially on the exits of the corners. Next up, we got the stories of the race.
Absolutely. It makes me wonder, too, that what are the marbles going to look like on the outside of some of those faster corners, as we've got David Williams currently in the pole position. which is honestly probably welcome for David, because so far I believe he's knocked up 2 pole positions, as Darling has covered half of them so far in this season, but obviously he can't take any more, at least in the prototype field. But Bradley Haley, a driver who has struggled in these LMP2s for pretty much this entire season, suddenly finds himself on the front row. This is fascinating that he's suddenly got pace here this weekend.
Absolutely. I was expecting either De Vries, Tinsey, or Wolf to be up there in the second spot, but Haley has absolutely pulled out a lap here today. We got to see if, he's able to hold on to it, as qualifying's only half the battle here at Motorsport.
So let's see what Haley is going to be able to do here. He's slow, so this must be some sort of out lap or something for him. In the meantime, another driver coming around to finish a lap is Carter Kundinger, as we hop on board with him. And in fact, we are going to see what he looks like at his rig right now. He's got a pretty snazzy setup here. He can't see any of that. Obviously, he's racing with his VR set on. You can see him try to look to the apexes as he wheels through the S's and then whites. As he crosses the line, this one is going to be a 106.3, so that is his quickest so far, and that will jump him up to 5th. He's one of 4 drivers that we've got on boards with this evening that we'll try and check in as the race progresses. So let's take a look at our 3rd place driver, another one of our main contenders in the prototypes, Jason De Vries, currently 2nd in the points. He sits 3rd on the track, but oh boy, it is tight here, Cy, between himself and Bradley Haley. Only 13 hundredths between the pair of them.
There might be a little bit of a compromise setup going on here, Joe, because of the LMP1, LMP2s around here. They don't like to bottom out. Those cars are very low to the ground, and the compressions here at Motorsport can cause a lot of undercarriage damage if you're not careful in the compressions out of turn 2 and into Moss Corner. So I think there's a little bit of a setup compromise going on here between the field. David might be running it very risky in qualifying and running the car nice and low, getting the maximum amount of downforce out of it. But he's risking that floor damage, and it could, and it definitely makes a difference even over a single lap. It costs you a couple of kilometers an hour top speed over a single bump. So he might be playing it risky, but the other guys might be playing it safe just to get those laps in.
So as Williams comes around, this latest one isn't faster. In fact, about a second off of his quickest. Just about 2 minutes left. DJ, I'm kind of curious how this is going to play between these LMP2s and your class this evening, the GTAMs, especially since that class specifically is for the drivers with a lower I rating. Well, I guess more specifically, a lower license that they have been given in this series, although their I rating does play a part of that as Carbonneau goes off track. I was wondering, I mean, how do you think that is going to develop between drivers with not necessarily as much experience or potentially as much confidence as some of those higher up here like we have in the prototypes?
Well, Joe, first off, looking at it, these qualifying times, I mean, it's about a 10-second difference between the LMP2s and the GTAMs here today. So that means these prototypes are going to be all over the back of that 3rd class here very, very quickly. I think what's really going to develop over the course of the race is just praying to stay online. That's what these LMP2 drivers really want to see out of the GT drivers. The problem is, for the LMP2s, as Cy talked about, getting offline here and different points other than the traditional racing line can cause the cars to bottom out, specifically as you're making the run down into Moss. That's a big area, and also the run off of Clayton. So if an LMP2 driver is forced offline in those areas, we may see them spin, lose a little bit of grip, maybe spin the tires a little bit, as well as potentially pick up some floor damage from taking an alternate line. So that's going to be a storyline to look at going up through the race.
Steve Peterson across the line. Looks like he was just about 6/1000ths off of his quickest. So instead we check out Shane Hunter. Well, he's not going to give us a show. He's going to head into pit lane. Important to practice that here today. You can see how narrow it is entering into there. Cancian, the next across the line, is not going to improve, sadly. And then it looks like Josh Wolf, same thing. He'll stay put in 7th position. De Vries is not able to improve on that third, and we're down to 7 seconds left. So I think Luke Carbonneau, as he flies through the S's, will be the first to take the checkered flag in this qualifying session. Can the 492 get any higher than 9th spot and get himself onto the 4th row? No, it's going to be 1068 as Sheldon Rosenbaum also stays on the last spot. Oh, excuse me. No, he does improve into 10th. Leif Peterson up next. He comes across the timing line, but 1068's not going to do it. Next up is Josh Wolf, sitting P7, also giving a big toe to Jason De Vries. I wonder if Jason's going to be able to get himself a nice time here at the end and jump onto the front row as the Lap Rats racing car cycles across. And that's not going to be quicker. Jason was. It's a 105.9. That gets him on to second.
That was very, very close, I'd say. I think that dirty air cost him a little bit at the end, but all that time down the straight made the difference.
Carbonneau, I think, already crossed. Yeah, we already saw him take the checkered flag. So that is it for our qualifying session. This is going to be fascinating, no doubt. Question is, how many are going to survive to see that checkered flag? Because as we said before, this race is notorious for causing a little bit of calamity and drivers having to leave licking their wounds. We'll get to that qualifying order in just a moment here, but should be a fun one regardless. We talked about the temperatures being a little bit warm here today, and we saw earlier it was a little over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll see if that changes as the race goes on. Let's go through our starting order for the day. It is going to be David Williams who starts on the top spot with Jason De Vries still keeping him in check from second place. Bradley Haley back to form starting from third. And Robert Tinsey, also a bit of a return to form for him. He'll be P4. Carter Kundinger, nice job up in fifth with Mark Wilson in the sixth position. It's Josh Wolf starting in seventh. Leif Peterson will be P8 and Luke Carbonneau in ninth. Sheldon Rosenbaum, good enough for a top 10 with Shane Hunter in 11th and Robert Kanchin, the last of our prototypes, in 12th. Cy?
Well, we have the newcomer of Paul Darling on the pole in the GT Pro class, followed closely by Kevin Binkley, the current leader in the points. Paul won't be battling him for the overall championship, but he will be messing up that battle between him and Ross. In third, we have Stephen Jeffrey, and fourth, we have the second place contender in the championship, Ross Booth. In fifth, we have Paul Slavonic. Sixth, Young Park. Seventh, Vance Bow. Eighth, Christopher Pies. It's a little bit out of place for being third place in the championship. We're looking to improve that. Same thing for Marc-Antoine Thibault in ninth place. In 10th, we have Mo Islam. 11th, Olivier Turcotte. In 12th, Paul Lindsay. 13th, Jerry Mueller. And 14th, Dominic Dornberg. What about the GTM, DJ?
Well, starting off in pole as he is leading the championship is Ryan Wash, followed by Joey Atterbury. Ryan Robertson working on that consistency by qualifying third in class, and behind him, Freddie Tinklow. Mark Kodrowski will be lining up fifth, followed by Kevin Santana and Eric Godot-Depot in seventh. Mark Schneidel will be in eighth, followed by Joe Steifel in ninth and Luke Schmidt in 10th. Jared Eaton lines up 11th, followed by David Perry and Sean Reese. In 14th is Matt Owens, followed by Chris Sherburne and Dale Green.
Well, Cy, I hope you've done your research, because usually you know your stuff here, but as far as those LMP2s and GT Pros, who's your picks for tonight?
Oh, I'd say it's going to be very close. Normally, if Paul was racing, I'd say Paul would be my pick for the LMP2, but he's not, unfortunately. So I'm going to be a little bit biased here and put Jason De Vries down. He is very good in traffic, and I'd say with a little bit of luck and a good start here, he could be a real thorn in the side for David and maybe take advantage either in the pit stops or just take advantage of, a pick on track.
And as for the GT Pro class?
Definitely, I want to put my money on the new guy, Paul Darling. He would be my pick for LMP2, but he's my pick for GTE here. He was over a half second quicker than Kevin Binkley in qualifying, which is quite frankly ludicrous. So I think he has a very good shot if he keep not only keep out of the way of the LMP2s, but get past the GTMs effectively.
Yeah, it's only a minute 12 around here, so it's that is an incredible gap that he's pulled. DJ, what about those GTMs? Who looks good today?
Well, it looks like it's going to be BMW all the way with Wash, Atterbury, and Robinson all in those new Bimmers. And out of those three, I've got to say, I think Joey Atterbury is going to return to a little bit of his preseason form, starting off in second. Watch the 29.
So interesting picks. And we are coming up the Mario Andretti straight currently with Williams ahead of the field behind that pace car. Interesting that DeVries is holding back a little bit, but he should have time to pull forward. So, and they will have a split start in this series if you're new to this. So each class will have its own race start. You won't have to miss anything, at least hopefully. Sometimes it does get a little crazy and go long, but we'll try to cover all of them if we can. Up to the S's. 60 minutes here. It is essentially a sprint race, and that can mean things are a little bit more antsy for the drivers. There's less time to do anything, more pressure to just go and make it happen. That caused more accidents today. Porsche pace car is in. Williams is on it. Green flag is out. A little bit of a bobble from both of them, spinning up the tires as they accelerate down into the first corner. Williams has the inside. They're going to go single file pretty quickly. And yes, no dramas as they come off the first corner. Let's go to the GTE start side.
Paul Darling is off and running. He's able to get across for turn one. Kevin Binkley is out wide, a little bit under pressure from Stephen Jeffrey behind him. They're all single file in the top five into turn two. Let's go to GTMs.
It's a good start from Ryan Wash. A little bit of a challenge there from Ryan Robertson trying to come up the inside of, or the outside of Joey Atterbury, but Atterbury able to fend him off as they work their way up the hill into Clayton. Looks like everybody's been able to get through clean, but it is a big lead for Ryan Wash here early on.
Already had a problem for Carter Kundinger in the 0-2. We'll try and come back to that a little bit later, but I think that was a self-spin. I think actually he must have hit one of those landmines, as we call them here, because the car hit a big bump. Meanwhile, it is still David Williams about a half a second ahead of Jason DeVries. Haley holding on to things. Top three getting a little bit of a stretch away from everyone behind them as you see them fly onto the front stretch and start lap number 2.
That dirty air is going to be a powerful thing in the LMP2s.
As we take a look at the GT Pros now, Paul Darling still up in front of Binkley. Not much separation really through the front of the fields in our GT Pro classes. It looks like Carter Kundinger did have to take a tow, unfortunately, so he must have gotten a lot of damage from that bump in the track. Up and through Clayton for the second time in this race, and suddenly Paul Darling finds himself able to pull quite a gap. We hop on board with Kevin Binkley running in second place. Stephen Jeffrey is not too far behind him. We can't see it in the mirrors right now, but certainly threatening. Let's see if any of them can get a bit of a run and get themselves a shot at trying to pass into turn 8. This is looking good, actually. That neon green 249 has got a great opportunity. Can he manage to overtake the vet? Binkley stays to the inside. Now he drifts back out. Does not defend. Jeffrey gains, but not enough. He's going to stay put in third.
Makes you wonder if that RSR is trimmed out a little bit more than that Corvette in front of him. Looks to be the case as, well, Binkley pulls a little bit through the corners, but not nearly as much as I thought he would. That Porsche getting the run off the corners with that massive rear weight that it has. But look into the sweeper for the C8 to pull a lead.
We're going to look back at the GTMs. Wash is a whole 1.7 seconds ahead, but looking at your pick here, DJ, Atterbury's got a little bit of problems in his mirrors.
Yeah, he just has not been able to pull out a gap from Ryan Robertson here. Nothing really doing. It looks like Atterbury's having a little bit of internet connection issues there. He saw a little bit of a blink, but he just seems to be running a little bit wide at corners. That can be a little tricky, but we're also looking back here at Tinklow as well, as he's got a great view of this battle taking place in front of him.
He's running in fourth. And trying to look through my stats, I think this might be the first start this season if ever, for Tinklo in the Autobahn series. There we can see him running another driver with a VR headset as he takes it down and around out of Moss hairpin, and then once again picking up speed, heading up the hill along the Mario Andretti Straight.
And Joe, I really have to say, in these GTAMs and really across the field, everybody keeping themselves relatively in line here early on. We haven't seen a whole lot of crazy dives. I get the sense this is the calm before the storm. These GTAM drivers know the chaos that is going to be brought on by the LMP2s closing in, and they are just holding station.
Speaking of those LMP2s, Williams is already to the back of green, the very end of our GTAM field. This is where it gets crazy. Hopping on the roof of the 01, and you can see how much he gets checked up by that Lambo.
But here's a part of the track that's critical. He's going to be looking around the outside for a lot of these passes, or looking on the outside, then snapping back to the inside just like he does, executing perfectly there. But here's the dreaded turn 2. This is where people can get caught out. Look at that, he has to check up hard at the bottom of the hill, and that's what Jason DeVries is looking for. He goes around the outside of turn 3. Jason was about, I'd say, a second and a half back when they first hit traffic. The gap is stabilizing now at around a second, but this is not what David wants at all.
We don't need a replay of it, but I can report that Vance Bow did hit the wall out of Moss Corner. It looked like a glancing blow right through here, where we watch from Bradley Haley's perspective. Still holding on to the back of Jason DeVries by about 0.7 of a second. DeVries has a bigger gap, double the gap, up to David Williams, our leader in this prototype class. About 1.4 to 1.5 seconds. More traffic in front of him. Joe Stifle, who tries to hug to the right side.
And we have a battle going on between Kevin Binkley, Stephen Jeffrey, and Ross Booth. They have all closed up. And the LMP2s aren't too far behind, so they need to get this sorted before they get there. Otherwise, we could have a bit of a battle while people are lapping them. Well, it's a 4-car battle now. Paul Slavonic and Christopher Pies are kind of looking, but not quite there. The RSR gets another good launch out of Moss, coming down the Andretti Straight. And looks like the Corvette just has a little bit too good of a run out of the corner here. I've been watching Stefan every single lap. He closes to within a 10th. Or gets right to the bumper of Kevin Binkley, but can't quite make the move there. I'm getting the feeling Ross Booth is getting a little bit frustrated sitting behind the two of them.
As we watch from the nose, we've also been keeping half an eye on those prototypes as they weave through the GT traffic. Haley's not been treated kindly, and David Williams, frankly, lost a good bit of time in that exchange as well. So that could easily develop into a fight between them. We'll jump over there if that happens. Down through Clayton yet again. And you can see how much the cars bounce over this rough pavement that experiences Canadian winters and just gets destroyed each season. Down through 4. And then incredible braking as the car compresses up and through the Moss hairpin. They head back up the hill. And I think we had an issue with the 913 in our GT Pros. I think this involved Mueller potentially.
Well,
no, it looks like
replay here, Joe. It looks like he just went out wide. It looks like turn 3 just caught him out there, and re-entering the track, the car snapped back to the right, or rather to the left, rather. Look at this. Yeah, it looks like he just outbraked himself a little bit, and that Porsche does not like to be pushed too hard into that corner there, especially as the track falls away from you on the apex. Luckily, he didn't hit anything. He's able to continue on.
So that sends him to the very back of the GT Pro field, unfortunately. At least of those who are driving still, Vance Bow had to take retirement today because of his incident. We're watching Wolf just behind Robert Tinsey. Bob the Blade here, who gets a much better exit than Josh does, coming off that final corner. Next up is actually Dornenberg, who we were just talking about before. Let's see. This is not a good space for Tinsey. He's losing a bunch of time. Look at how quickly Josh suddenly approaches the gearbox of that car. And in fact, he might be able to keep him pinned in. No, he has to switch back across the right and follows him through.
He was definitely looking to pin him behind the Porsche there, but didn't quite work. The Porsche had to come back left to take the next corner. But It was very close, and that's the kind of racing you'll be seeing at Motorsport here in the LMP2s. They're just going to have to be working around traffic so much that they'll use the traffic to their advantage as much as possible, kind of corralling the GT drivers where they want them to go. It's kind of like sheepdog and, well, sheep, I suppose.
Wonder how they feel about that sort of metaphor. But as they come up the hill, Wolf right on top of Tinsley, and not close enough. How powerful is the slipstream down that long straight here? Is it enough to be able to try and slingshot by side?
Well, I think it's strong, but I don't think it's quite strong enough to clear a car into turn 8. It's definitely strong enough to get alongside for certain, but you need a really good run out of Moss Corner. And with these cars being so stiff and the exit so bumpy, as we get back to Kevin Binkley here with Stephen Jeffrey and Ross Booth, I don't think they've been more than a second apart, or even a half second apart this entire race, Joe.
Certainly seems like it, but we've also seen this a lot, where they're just kind of riding in a line up the Andretti straight, nobody making any moves. Is there any advantage to be gained from some fuel saving doing this sort of thing, or do you think they're pushing flat out and just can't touch each other?
It's hard to tell in GT cars, Joe, especially with they don't have as strong of a draft as LMP2. So even if you get a really good run out of Moss Corner down the Andretti straight, you can't always make the pass happen. As Ross Booth is looking, oh, not quite. Maybe a little bit of saving there, but not entirely sure.
Let's take a replay of Mo Islam, maybe about 50 seconds back. The 206 has had to come in for repairs, but my goodness, he managed to climb the wall at the Moss hairpin. This is something I don't think I've ever seen at this track. He somehow hit it hard enough. You're going to see it at the bottom of the hill here, coming through 4. Not sure if he outbraked himself or what. There he goes. Yeah, just too hot in, and then that's not where the track goes. I'm glad he was able to get off, but it looks like it cost him a little bit too much. Whoa! And things have suddenly come awry as Ross Booth sees Paul Slavonic to his side. He's losing a spot right as he has to make way for David Williams, who splits them briefly. He's going to be able to get the toe back, but there's just not enough of a run up to turn 8. So something has allowed the 528 to finally get him a position.
Well, I can confirm that Ross actually did pass Stephen Jeffrey into turn 3 here, but he went wide at Moss, and that cost him 2 positions there. So easy to do at Mosport.
There goes DeVries, able to overtake a couple of our GT pros. Oh, late move as Jeffrey himself wasn't quite sure which way that LMP2 was gonna choose, and eventually they got it sorted out, but I doubt that's the last we'll see of those sort of miscommunications.
We'll go back to LMP2 here. Oh, we're going to stick with this battle here as it's looking better and better. I think Ross might have a run going down the Andretti straight here. Bradley Haley having to wait behind this battle. You're going to see a lot of waiting by the LMP2s through Moss. They just don't have the downforce to pass there as they go onto the Andretti straight. Bradley Haley looking left, he's looking right. He's going to split the two of them. Ross wanting that slipstream, but not quite getting it. I don't think he's going to make the move this lap.
I thought Ross had a better exit than that. He was certainly very close to the back of Slavonic, but these cars could be set up quite differently. Just don't know until we get to talk to them, get some information. You can see he still reels him in down through the S's, but Binkley lost a lot of time there as Bradley Haley went by him, allowing Jeffrey to reel him back in, so the fight for second returns once more. This is really awkward for Paul Slavonic. That fight between Wolf and Tinsley had to take away the apex down through turn 1.
And it's probably going to take away the apex at turn 3 here if they're not careful. They're going to get the apex, but here coming down into Moss, it's going to be the last late breakers as they have to pass a GTM Lamborghini. Oh, and he touches the grass, 3 wide. No. Oh no! Is that Wolf in the grass? I think it is.
Wolf into the barriers. Some big damage on the right-hand side of the car. That looked sketchy on the way in, and unfortunately it was Josh who paid the price for it. This is a perfect angle from above to try and inspect it.
He was just unsighted. He couldn't see the track when he was that close to Tinsley, Joe.
And it drops away from you and everything, so Josh Wolf falls to 9th from that one little slip up, and we're only 15 minutes into the race. Look at all the traffic he has to go through all over again. This is a nightmare lap for Josh Wolf in that number 40 machine. This is a traffic jam, an absolute plug up. And eventually he'll be able to get by them, as he still does have more speed than them, despite losing quite a bit from slapping the right side into the tires. But you can see visibly what's wrong with that car, all crinkled up from a bit of contact. That broke up a lot of our fights, frankly, for the LMP2 cars, but the GTDs are still close together, as Joey Atterbury and Ryan Robertson are trying to duke it out for second place.
They really are, Joe. These two have been like magnets throughout the entire day thus far. We've seen them pull apart a little bit, only to reel back in. Looking at the way they're running, I genuinely think that Robertson's got a lot more speed held up in that 210 BMW, and he's just waiting for the right moment to get by Atterbury. We haven't seen him be aggressive. He's just being calm.
So Robertson, who we mentioned earlier on, is looking for some more consistent results. He's kind of hot or cold, as he's had 3 podiums, all of them on the third step. But other than that, I'm seeing a couple 3 points, a couple 1 points, and then a single one where he nabbed 10 points. He's got to do better than that if he wants to try and start to play catch up on guys like Wash, Atterbury, and Santana. And well, look at this. He is on top of Atterbury in a big way, coming up the Mario Andretti straight now.
He is, and he is wanting to get this move done, because as he has been waiting behind Atterbury this entire time, Freddie Tinklow has just been slowly but surely reeling them in. So here goes Robertson to the outside. No, he backs off. There comes, that's DeVries up the inside, and that's Tinklow maybe thinking about a move in the Lamborghini.
And Tinklow isn't able to capitalize, unfortunately. Why don't we hop on board with the 46 here as we watch that fight ahead and see if he can get himself stuck into the mix. Once again, an Apex having to be taken away, this time by Bradley Haley, who goes inside of Robertson. Let's see how frantic he's looking around, or is he uber focused at one position here now?
He's looking pretty calm here. You can see just the little adjustments he's having to make mid-corner. That car in the heat getting a little bit slippery through some of the high-speed corners. But then he's able to keep it nice and easy. So watch him through here. Watch him through Moss. Look how far right he's looking over, sighting up almost into that blind apex. Full lock of the wheel to get it around and then driving it back out.
Not as good of an exit for Ryan this time. So Atterbury looks much more safe. And that's going to allow Robert Tinsey back through, too, who still runs in 4th. Let's go up to our GT Pros. Sounds like Slavonic and Booth have a whole melee. Oh, and there's a Ferrari off track. That is Santana. Oh my goodness, that's our 3rd in the points.
And Joe, he has been having the worst day. He got off into the grass early on, and then this spin as well. Day going from bad to worse for Kevin Santana.
So let's see, this happened in the Moss hairpin. I didn't see what started it, though. He's already got a lot of traffic around him, which doesn't bode well. I hope he didn't get hit off by somebody, but at the same time, I don't want to see him make a mistake all on his own. It was his own mistake. Oh, no.
And that's very, very easy to do there, Joe. You want to try to carry maximum amount of speed through the beginning of that corner and try to slow the car down to get the second part of the hairpin. And if you get that just slightly wrong, it will send you off up into the brown stuff.
I think we got a fight for 5th still. It was between Slavonic and Booth for 4th, but looks like Ross has dropped off. There you see him in the Satellite VRS Corvette, with Christopher Pies now chasing him in the Porsche.
Christopher Pies definitely trying to, well, both of these guys, Ross Booth and Christopher, both trying to get back into their points-paying positions. Their championship rival, Kevin Binkley and Mark Thibault, are very close to them, so they're trying to put gaps. But looks like Ross is just having no luck in traffic. I've been watching him all night, and every time the LMP2s come by, they always let the car in front of him pull away, and the car behind him get closer. And same thing when he's going through GTD traffic. Guy just can't catch a break.
We've talked in the past about how Slavonic is kind of one of those guys that tends to be a little bit unlucky in this series as well. Hoping, crossing fingers that turns around, especially now that he's gapped himself a little bit to those behind, but he's got a ways to get up to Stephen Jeffrey on the podium. Down and swinging across towards Clayton Corner. The 528 Chevy Corvette plunges across the blind crest through Clayton. And he's now got 40 minutes to go. The pit window is open, but we don't expect many to try and come in early unless they're dealing with damage in front of them. Look at that, 3 wide as they go by one of our GTMs. That's Stephen Jeffrey, excuse me, no, Joe Steifel, who is being passed by Jeffrey and Binkley.
But these guys have been nose to tail the entire race, even through traffic. It's impressive. I'm almost tempted to think Stephen Jeffrey has a faster car, but is just waiting behind Kevin Binkley for the pit stop so he can take less fuel and jump them. But you can see Ross Booth, he's flashing the lights at Paul Slavonic, trying to get him to go or get him to move over, because he is losing time to his championship rival, and he is not happy.
Unfortunately, still more traffic. The conveyor belt continues. And we watch from Ross's perspective. He's absolutely dropped pies now. And set his sights on the 03 into turn 1. Let's see if he gains anything through here, or are they even? Same make of car. Gains a little bit, it looks like. What about here?
This is always the scary part in the GT car. If you mess up the entry and that front starts pushing, you're just gonna have to hope you don't catch any grass at all or straight into the tire barrier. No way of even trying to stop it. Because if you get on the brakes, the car's gonna spin, especially with how light it is over the hill.
Still stuck at about 0.3 of a second behind. Fastest lap set by Bradley Haley. Now that's fascinating. Is Haley able to
in the race?
Yeah. Oh, another car off. That is Mark Kudrowski in the GTDs.
And Joe, I've got to cut in on you. He's not the only GTD to go off. Ryan Robertson had a big off going through Moss. He has fallen down the order to 4th.
It looks like this happened, yeah, about 30 to 40 seconds ago. Here we go. Yeah, this is it right here. Coming into the corner. Did he get a little help, though? Wolf was very close behind.
He was very close, but it was the same problem that Santana had, just carried too much speed through this front of the corner. Good job to keep the car as steady as possible and not run into that outside wall, but that's that inconsistency that we talked about from Robertson coming back again to bite him.
And let's get a replay on Slavonic. He manages, or excuse me, Booth rather, I should say, he manages to overtake Slavonic in a fantastic way. Not often that you see passes into turn 1, but a mistake from the 528 opens the door, almost roughhouses his way past.
I was watching them, Joe, and Ross was not happy with the way Paul defended into turn 8, so I guess this was his way of telling him to, if you're going to race me like that, I'm going to race you hard right back, and that's his way of showing it. Now we got to see if he's going to drop Slavonic or not as he tries to catch the battle between Stefan and Binkley up ahead.
Yeah, that'll be really telling for sure. They're going past Robertson that we saw just a bit ago making his mistake, but looks like both are going to be able to get through before they hit the S's. See Josh Wolf down into pit lane, but I think this is probably to repair the damage that he experienced, as typically we don't see drivers hitting this early for any sort of strategic call.
It might be within the pit window, but it's very early. He might have come in a bit too early, honestly, Joe.
Wow, Jeffrey getting right tucked up underneath the rear wing of Binkley. In fact, taking a little bit of a peek, but he can't track out. Neither of them could. That was Dornenberg that they just went by. That almost gave an opportunity to that highlighter green 249. If he just sticks with it, I think something will happen that'll give him a shot.
Whether it be in the pits or whether it be on track, Stefan's right there. If Binkley even makes a tiny error, I mean, Binkley's going to eat him up.
We ride on board, back up the hill from the lowest point on the track. They gain quite a bit of speed, up to 165 miles an hour before they get onto the binders. Jeffrey looking strong into the turn. They've got Freddie Tinklo in front of them. Lamborghini is not going to have a great place to try and get out of the way here because there's just no long straights from here until they get out of Moss.
Surprising. I always thought the Corvette was faster through the long sweepers here. Oh, Binkley gets held up. That's not what you want to see. He's obviously waiting for that car to duck off to the right so he can slip at the inside, but not the GT cars don't always play the way you play the way you want to.
And that's our leader in the GT or the LMP2s going past. That was a lapped car, the car of Carter Kundinger that he went by. So that was not for position. But this will throw an extra wrench in things in these battles, of course, as those prototypes now cycle back again for the second time this race.
While we were talking about that, Ross Booth cut the gap to him and Stephen Jeffrey in half that lap. The gap was around 1.3 when they crossed the line. The gap now, about 0.7 of a second.
There goes his teammate as he watches De Vries continue to try to chase David Williams. And almost 3 wide for a second, nearly banging doors as we go side by side. Oh, and there is a car into the wall. That's Joey Atterbury just got spun. Oh my goodness. And he's going to get hit by the car that was off. That was Carter Kundinger. Absolute disaster for one of our front runners in the GTMs.
Oh my goodness gracious, Joe. We're going to jump back and take a look at it. Here is Atterbury in that black and red BMW diving back through this last sequence of corners. Oh, he's pinched in there. You can see just how tight it is. Trying to get around, stay on his line. Here they go into it as he gets out. Little bit of a touch there, and then the back end comes around and right into the back of that spun LMP2.
And that was
around by Jason De Vries.
Yeah. Did he get? Can we get the cameras on the 89? Did he get any damage from that? And that's Kundinger, who of course had the big damage from that. He already had an accident at the very start. De Vries, he might have gotten away with it. I'm not seeing anything from these angles. He cycles by Dornenberg one more time. Yeah, it was the 89 that made the initial contact that started to spin poor Atterbury. So where did Joey wind up? Is he still running, actually?
He is in the pits, Joe. He has towed into the pits and getting service right now, so this may be day done for Joey Atterbury, but if he does come out, he will be many laps down.
Oh, horrible day.
That's going to be a shot in the foot for the DMG United efforts. They put Paul Darling in the GTEs to try to cover up their weaknesses in the GT field, but then Joey Atterbury gets taken out like this. By the team
can't win them all.
Yeah.
This is Carter coming back in, many laps down, of course. And he actually is taking, I believe, his second pit stop of the day. Oh, is that Haley off? That's Haley! From the sky, we can see that bright yellow and white car trundling on the inside of Moss Corner. That is not a spot that you typically see cars wind up.
Could this be the dreaded landmine? It is. Look at that. It popped the rear off the ground. Luckily, he didn't back it onto the track, but that cost him so much time, so much time.
That is exactly what caught Carter Kundinger at the start of this race and spun him in a very similar way, except Carter actually went completely across the track and I think into the wall as well. Oh, and he must have gotten damage from this. Oh, no.
So disappointing. It was that trade-off I was talking about earlier, Joe, whether you want to keep the ride heights high to keep it off the ground or keep it low and keep that downforce. And I think Haley took the former, and he's paying for it now, unfortunately. He's having such a good run.
Well, this brings us a good battle for fifth now as Peterson and Carbonell are promoted upwards. Oh, and a car goes off. That was Young Park, and the GT Pros finds himself sliding unceremoniously into the tires out of Quebec. It's the 24 car. Oh, it looks like, unfortunately, just missed it. So as we come back live, Young Park gets slotted down into 10th because of that incident.
Seems these Porsches have struggled slowing up for these sort of middle speed sweepers, don't you think, Joe? I think I've seen, what was it? I think it was I want to say Dominic Dornenberg and maybe Mo Islam that I saw having the same sort of issue.
Yeah, you're right. So it looks like it's a tough track for those cars, unfortunately. As we now check in with our GTM leader, Ryan Wash, another one of our drivers carrying an onboard here this evening. And he's now got, well, a huge distance. We can actually get to see his mirrors a little bit there. Look, this is his actual perspective in VR on his screen. But if Tinklo was a little closer, we could maybe see him in the mirrors. He is 7 seconds behind, so there is no hope of that right now.
Indeed, Joe. I really would say that Ryan's running a race of his own here today with as many cars as we've seen out on track running around him. It is anything but. Now, this is a great angle. You can see what he's doing. Follow his head motions. He's really not looking behind him at the other cars that are coming on. He just knows they're there. He can hear the spotter telling him where they are, and he's just running his racing line. That's exactly what you want to do as a lower class GT driver. You don't want to do anything unpredictable.
We got some action coming up with Jeffrey and Binkley. Stefan actually managed to get side by side along the backstretch, but couldn't execute. Now he's going to come in. So he's going to try and jump him with a little bit of pit strategy, locks him up onto the lane. The 249, though, I think was down to his pit speed limiter in time. Let's see what sort of pit stop he has. Shouldn't be expecting tires here. It should be just fuel. How quickly can he get in and out? 12.2 seconds. Remember, he was riding directly behind Binkley for a long, long time, so he could have managed to have soft shoot it for a good 30 minutes now.
Yeah, he came in exactly at halfway, and I would say that was a brilliant strategy because he saw the traffic coming up behind him. He saw the traffic. Oh, as we see, who is that? That is Sheldon Rosenbaum spinning at Moss Corner. Luckily, I think nobody else was involved there as we see him.
Well, that was actually very close to both Booth and Binkley. They had to go around the outside of him. You're going to see him just approach here, and there they go.
Want to be stopped.
Yeah. Oh,
got out of the way just in time. I think that was Joshua Wolf going past, maybe. Too wide through Moss as well. Very, very difficult place to make that work. Luckily, gets that handled.
Have some other takers. Mark Wilson pits. I see Jerry Mueller, who's a little ways down the order in the GT Pros, pitting as well. And Sheldon Rosenbaum is now in naturally after his incident on track. As good a time as any. Mueller returns to the racing. No, excuse me, that's Dale Green, rather, that I saw just take off.
Oh, and we have side-by-side action here with Ross Booth and Kevin Binkley down into Moss Corner. They're side-by-side. Ross clears him barely, wow. And look at Paul Slavonic trying to be opportunistic, but cut off by Kevin Binkley closing the door there.
Let's see how this happened. Yeah.
That started way back in turn 3. Look at this. Ross tucks in right behind Kevin Binkley here. Just gets better. Yeah, Kevin Binkley goes wide. He understeers and goes wide, gives Ross the outside, and then Ross just hangs on for dear life. This is not somewhere... Look at that, almost banging door mirrors there. And Ross is just better on the brakes into the corner. I almost think Ross is running more downforce. I
was just about to say, I'm pretty sure he is, because he got past like he was standing still. Binkley, look, as we come back live, he's right back ahead. He didn't even get to lead the lap.
Now I think we know why Jeffrey was so frustrated sitting behind that he had decided to pit early. I think Ross might be having a similar idea now. But all this battling is just giving Jeffrey a bigger cushion to work with. Same thing with Paul Darling.
Booth is just all over the back of that 75. Frustrating thing is if he's not got the straight line speed, I don't know how he's going to keep him back as soon as he gets ahead. Kevin didn't even get that phenomenal of a run, it looked like, out of Moss Hairpin right here. Just a regular corner for him. Oh, he's going to try.
Dirt.
Holy cow.
What a save.
Booth got by, and now Slavonic's going to try and take advantage. Don't forget about Christopher Pies. He's gained a lot of time with all this mucking about that these three have been doing. But there is a great example as Kevin Binkley, you can see, still pulling away from him.
While we were watching this, DeVries just hopped into the pits, Same thing with Robert Tinsley. So we have the LMP2 leaders in the pits now as we watch. Yeah, we watch the GT leaders coming to the pits. Pies enters the pit lane as well. A lot of Porsches coming in early. Let's see if that strategy call works out for them. Ross is home free now. He is now chasing down Paul Darling, 13 seconds ahead. Paul has been quiet, but he's been running a perfect race so far. So it basically doesn't matter where he pits, but Ross now trying to get the gap between him, Slavonic, and I would say Stefan Jeffrey.
Kind of used to that from Darling by this point, I think, the way he just dominates here. De Vries, critically, he came out with very little traffic in front of him. In fact, he's just catching some now, and that is only Chris Sherburne on the straight. So basically, I wonder if Jason was watching or had someone watching what the traffic was doing and knew he had a handy gap. Not sure what the gap was between himself and Williams when he pitted, but we'll have the pit timing at least, as he is going to lose a little time as he goes by Paul Darling, our leader in the GT Pros. There is between Tinsley and De Vries, and Tinsley is about 18 seconds back, but look at the 5 seconds between them. Wow.
5 seconds is a lot of fuel in these cars. I'd say it's about almost 10 liters, maybe a little bit more than that. Do you think Tinsley's being cautious, or do you think Jason is being very aggressive on the strategy here?
I have to imagine that Tinsley's being cautious. I can't imagine that De Vries would short fuel it that drastically. Well then.
Now we're just waiting on David to come in and see what his time is.
That raises all sorts of question marks. Now here's a battle we haven't watched at all yet, but is looking close for third currently in the prototypes. Cancian and Hunter split by about 0.3 of a second themselves. Paul Lindsay going to try and stay out of the way. Oh, is that Jeffrey? Was that Jeffrey off? Oh, no.
Let's get a replay of what happened there.
So,
that is such a shame.
Watch the left side of the car coming from turn 8 here.
Oh, it's that Porsche front end again. It just washed out on him.
Oh, and he hit in a big way. So he had to take a tow into the pits. He was so close to the pit entry too. He could have driven that in, I would think. So it must have taken a big lick. And our leader is in. Williams is now on the lane. Tinsley, or excuse me, no, we need. Where's De Vries? Oh, there he is. I couldn't find him on my time in scoring. He's in 4th, and he is coming up the backstretch now.
There's a 21.2 second pit stop for Jason De Vries. Now David is sitting in the pits waiting for that fuel to finish coming in, taking up past 15 seconds now.
No tires expected. Yeah.
No tires.
He's rolling.
He's rolling.
So exiting the pits, De Vries.
But look at all that traffic ahead of him.
But De Vries isn't even close enough to take advantage of that. It's going to be what looks like about 5 seconds. Ooh, with a car off in front of him. Well, when another car off after that, Robertson was 1 and Dale Green. So there goes our 4th in the points championship for the GTMs with a 2nd off this race. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, DJ. Just he can't seem to have an in-between race. It's either got to be fantastic or terrible.
Exactly, Joe. And as a driver, it is so easy to make these mistakes. You make one mistake earlier in the race, and then this just leads to it. That's exactly what happens. Gets out too wide there, tries to catch it, and goes. And there he tries to come back onto the track.
I will say, kudos for him to not get into the tire bundles at the exit of turn 2. Dropping right sides and not going into those tires. Oh!
That's Josh Wolf. He's had so many wrecks. So this just kind of caps off a bad day for him. Unfortunately, when you have one with that hard of a hit, you're not really going to be able to come back. He has officially retired. Oh, goodness. And someone snuck through. I'm not sure who that Porsche was. Certainly gave him a scare. as we once again look at our GT Pro leader, Paul Darling. And he's got, man, my goodness, 14 seconds of a gap back to Slavonic. Booth is going to pit, and the first among our group, well, actually, no, I take that back. I think Paul Lindsay, or no, Christopher Pies was the first to hop in there.
And Marc-Antoine followed him into the pits. Very short stop for the GTEs, as we saw before. Keeping an eye on where Christopher comes out here. Christopher's coming down the front straight as Ross comes out of turn 1, so he's going to be safe. Now it's on Binkley and Slavonic to come down the pits and have their shot.
It looks to me like Pies lost time on that, as we take a glance up at guys like Slavonic and Binkley now, who are still waiting to execute their strategy. Yeah, Pies, if I recall, was right behind Booth and close to that battle before his pit stop, but now it's up to 2.5 seconds, unfortunately. Here we go. Do they pit this time? Slavonic is a yes. Binkley is a no. Another of our DMG United drivers looking for good points here. Hits his marks nicely. Looks like Turcotte also going to continue on past him. In fact, as Young Park pits, Slavonic's only going to lose one or two places in this pit stop exchange. So, very few drivers going past him that he needs to worry about potentially overtaking, even though we're down to 19 minutes left to go. In fact, there's only 3 left that we are waiting to come down and take their fuel. I mentioned Wilson and Hunter earlier. They're back at it again. This is for 6th now that we've seen all of our LMP2s having pitted. That is Hunter that you see in the 927 with the red trim chasing the purple and white of Mark Wilson. Up and over the crest once again. And Wilson pulling away quite handily over Hunter. So wonder if the traffic maybe just caused them to close back together quite quickly. Now, we've got Tinklow pitting. Let's see if we can get an onboard here, because he's actually, no, he's exiting now. I'm curious to see. We might be a little bit too late. I was wondering if he maybe fiddled with any of his settings on his wheels, since it's so rare we get to see the actual physical driver dealing with their buttons.
While we were watching this, I can report that Paul Slavonic had a small self-spin out of Moss corner. No damage, but he did lose a lot of time to Christopher Pies.
We might
spin, no big deal.
We might get to see Wash fiddle with his gear, though. He has pitted and is in, and he's just heading out now in the number 86, so our leader from the GT Pro, or GT AMS rather. Well, I saw him reach down. He just brought his hand back, so he was doing something there.
He was indeed, Joe. So there you see him flicking off the pit limiter. Now, what to watch for is maybe if he makes an adjustment on that wheel, seeing if he maybe changes something on brake bias, on how the car is feeling, maybe just a little bit of in-car adjustment. Looks like he's got it relatively good here for now. Flicking up and then back down the gears once again as he works his way around Quebec. Lines it up. You can see him checking in his mirror, seeing if there are any faster class cars behind him. It looks like, I have to say, Ryan Wash just feeling utterly at peace with that car. No changes. And
guys, if we come back to our regular cameras, Binkley got absolutely jumped. Booth and Pies are both by big margins.
It's that traffic we were talking about. Oh, I saw a P2 off in the grass there at turn 2 in the background. I don't know.
Was that DeVries? Oh, no! DeVries is off, and he's with Matt Owens. I think these are related.
Oh, he just gets to the back of him.
Well, he didn't expect him to drift across like that. And credit to DeVries, I mean, that was pretty much his only option because Robertson was to his inside.
He thought there was a lane there, not quite there.
I mean, he had to rush. He had to try and keep up with Williams. So I don't fault him for hustling it through. Now, this cost him second and third. He's down into fourth. But he's at least still racing. Lee Peterson's catching him. Was that enough damage that he's now slow on the track?
It didn't look like a very hard hit into the tire bundles there, Joe. I think he got away with it. I'm just worried about any undertray damage he might have from bouncing it across the grass.
It looks like he's recovering now, so whatever potentially was wrong with the car, looks like he's quickly adapting to it and pulling away as he comes back to the scene of the accident. This time is able to navigate it safely, sort of, as he goes way close to the outside, coming through.
Well, that's just the racer mentality, isn't it, Joe? You almost die one lap, and then the next lap you're right out there on the limit again.
That's how you win races, you know? And, oh, Christopher Pies is off. Pies is off in the hairpin. This is another unfortunate, unforced error for the 32.
It's these Porsches, Joe. Every single time we seem to see them go off the track, they just slide the fronts.
I'd like to note, if I'm seeing correctly, we are down to 31 cars left, and I believed I made a call to 30. What prizes do I get if I'm right?
Well, if it goes under, Joe, I think you lose the bet. It has to be over.
Oh, okay, I see. As we watch Pies continue on, DeVries, I can report, is definitely on his way. He's actually catching up to Mark Wilson now.
No, Joe, I think DeVries actually caught the landmine. He had a very slow lap.
Oh my gosh. More, yeah, you're right, because he was in fourth. More issues. And I'm going and checking on my screen. Looks like, unfortunately, we don't have replay footage of this. Yeah, he did. Except it was his front, weirdly. Usually I see the rear of the car bounce. This one, he just porpoised. What a ridiculous race we've been witnessing. Not the craziest we've seen in Autobahn, especially not the craziest we've seen with this series at Motorsport, but it has thrown us with so many loops. Nobody looks to be safe out there. What amazes me, honestly, DJ, is it's not really been many incidents between the classes. It's been drivers making their own errors.
Really and truly, Joe, and it's kind of a testament to how this series has been policed in terms of trying to get everybody to stay online. The classes are doing everything they can do to be calm. Anytime there has been an interclass incident, we have heard drivers immediately on the radio apologizing, doing any of that. But yeah, as you said, it's really just unforced errors catching the majority of the field out today.
Jerry Mueller making use of a lot of negative space this evening as he carries on. Sadly for Jerry, he's actually running ninth, which is not the last in that GT Pro class, but he's about a minute behind Paul Lindsay, who sits in eighth currently. And unless someone in front of him has some serious problems, I don't think he's going to be able to get any spots. That's Joe Stiefel. That's one of our GT AM drivers in front of him that he's not really hassling. It's just letting him run his race currently.
Yeah, but you can see there, Joe, just his eyes moving around, following it back the best he can. It's a good view of what these drivers have to do.
He needs a poster or a mural or something up behind him, I feel like. Let's go back to DeVries and see how the car is handling, because Wilson right up with him, still giving chase, about 3/10 behind them. Looks like he actually made that overtake recently. Let's take a look at that and watch what I assume is now become recovery mode for the 89. I don't think, yeah, he's already in front of him here on this one, so I'm not sure if we'll have this. Yeah, it looks like this was a little too far back, unfortunately. So, as we come back live, my goodness, let's go to the 199. Cancian and Hunter are going to have to work through their own minefield, a metaphorical one this time. There is a bunch of GT cars in front of them. Oh, and this gets tight down into turn 8. Dornenberg making sure to hold off to the side, let them through. Up next, it's going to be Schindel. I think they're going to catch him at a good spot just as they cross the start-finish line yet again, making sure to cut underneath. Hunter doesn't want to lose touch with that 199.
And right ahead of them, you can see in the distance a little bit, that is Mark Wilson. They are catching him slowly, because Mark is getting held up in traffic here a little bit behind a couple of GTD drivers. Look at him flashing his lights, trying to get them out of the way. He sees the two of them coming, and he wants no part of it.
Oh, but a big dive to the inside from Shane Hunter doesn't produce anything, unfortunately. As bopping out, looks like Cancian trying to find himself some clear space. Oh, he's going to give a big toe to the 927. Is this going to be enough? The red, white, and black machine looks off to the left side. Cancian holds the inside, staying defensive, and the pass isn't going to happen there. Sounds like poor Robertson continues his bad day. Let's stay with this, but I think we got an update from DJ.
I do indeed have an update. He and Eric Godot-Drapeau had a very, very rough coming together. Ryan Robertson just misjudging the braking zone and going full on into the back of Drapeau there, and that's sending him around. Robertson up to third, but having a very rough day.
This is still one of our closest fights. Hunter last time had a little bit of a look down into the Moss hairpin. Doesn't this time. Maybe he's trying to set himself up. Let's see if this will work any better. Wash is going to be giving a nice toe to Cancian at first as he eventually weaves off to the right side and lets him be. Way farther behind this time for the 927. So that's not going to do it. I can see Godot-Drapeau, unfortunately, in pit lane now after his incident we just heard about from DJ. Down to 8 minutes left to go. I guess the one nice thing is that there's been a lot of cloud cover we've been seeing coming in and out, and despite this being in the middle of the afternoon, track temperature's actually gone down a bit.
Yeah, I remember seeing at the race it was closer to 93 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's dropped down to about 87. So a little bit cooler, not much. I don't think the drivers will be going a second faster or anything like that, but they will definitely notice the tires are a bit easier to keep under temp.
If anybody's thinking things are starting to get calmer here with most of the gaps increasing, I'd say don't count your chickens quite yet, because this series tends to see most of the craziness in the last couple laps. As we look at the battle now for 5th, Slavonic and Turcotte. And I've got Robertson just in front of them. Nicely done.
Sawing at the wheel coming down into Moss. That's just how light that car is. You almost have to play with it coming up the crest. As Turcotte goes a little bit wide on the exit of Moss, I think Slavonic has it around here. Slavonic is only behind Turcotte because early in the race when we weren't looking, he had a little bit of a self-spin going into Moss corner, the corner we just came out of here. So he's trying to make up time back up to Christopher Pies, but I think he's a little bit too far back for that. He's going to settle for Oliver Turcotte here.
At best, it's looking like a top 5, unfortunately, for the 528. I think Slavonic, once again, just car has too much wing in it because he catches up through these twisty bits, and then up the Mario Andretti straight, he was nowhere to be seen.
Oh, look at the drive he gets out of turn 1. He's looking for the inside, but not quite.
That was.
And Turcotte locks up. He goes off. He cracked under pressure, and there he goes into the tire barriers.
That is your classic shake and bake. The 52 just unfortunately let himself get too distracted and falls down at least one position. I think, is he going to be able to get ahead of Park before Park gets to him? Let's go back to that fight for 7th. Kanchan and Hunter still a quarter of a second, and traffic in front of them now.
And they're still closing that gap to Robert Kanchan. Sorry, not Robert Kanchan. Mark Wilson ahead of Robert Kanchan. Gap is only down 1.5 seconds now.
David Perry up next in the Lamborghini. Ooh, and Kanchan's a little bit stuck. Oh, he drifts to the outside just in time for the 199 to be able to get through. I thought he was going to be plugged up on the inside. Hunter has no such luck this time. Down into the Moss hairpin, looking for that good exit. He's been tantalizingly close. This looks decent. He's about a car length back. Could this be the shot?
It looks good. He is closing quickly. He might get alongside. Kanchan's holding to the inside here, hoping to hold him around the outside and pass and defend there. Depends on how brave Shane. Oh, he lifts out early, trying to get the over-under here, but look at that dirty air. He can't quite keep the corner speed. And he's got to slot right back in.
We'll have to try
Honestly,
another
I think
day.
he wants to get the position. Oh, and he might be looking to turn one. Look at the run out of the final corner. He has a slight overlap, but again, he brakes just that little bit too early.
I think he just doesn't have the confidence, and he's running out of time with 5 minutes left to go on the clock. These things do a minute 6 laps. Williams is actually less than a quarter of a lap behind him, though. He just started his most recent. So will they actually be lapped here? I believe those two are the last on the lead lap.
Well, David has such a huge buffer that he can afford to let these guys battle it out on the last lap if it came down to it. And I think he'd be the kind of guy who would do that.
Yeah, he's not experiencing pressure from behind. Tinsley's a whole half a minute back. Despite how close we saw Hunter look through the hairpin, looked like he didn't have the greatest of exits. And while he closes the gap, runs out of straightaway, and he can't manage a side-by-side at least this time.
He just looks so much better through some of these twisty bits. He just needs to have well, the cojones to dive it up the inside every now and then, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's going to require a bit of steeling himself and really going for it. Hashtag send it. If he's got it in him. Less than 4 minutes left on the clock. Our gaps between the leaders and those behind are all pretty monstrously big. Honestly, the closest one is down in the GT AMs, so between Wash and Schindel, and that's still 16 seconds.
Yeah, it is still an absolute massive gap here, Joe. Really and truly, Schindel has drove a very, very clean race in second, has really not put a tire wrong this entire race. He's one of, if not the biggest mover in the GT AM category, up 6 spots from his starting position, but he has just had nothing for the perfect form of Ryan Wash here today.
Trying to see if this is going to be Schindel's best finish so far this season. And yes, he has not had a podium yet. In fact, he's only been here 3 races, if I'm seeing correctly. So, yeah, this will be a great showing for Schindel. As Cy, you've got some information on Paul Lindsay?
Yeah, unfortunately, Paul Lindsay is trying to recover here after a little bit of trouble earlier in the race. Trying to cut to the Young Park, but he just got tapped wide at turn 8. By that battling pair of LMP2s, Robert Kanchan and Shane Hunter. I couldn't quite see which LMP... Oh, well, there's the Porsche front end again, just understeering wide. Very, very similar things that we're seeing from cars of the same class here.
Well, I guess that's a
speaking
good
of Kanchan and Hunter, we have to go back to them. The gap is down under 0.2 of a second. Coming up at the turn 8. Maybe Shane has steeled himself like Joe was saying. He's not quite alongside, but he might be setting up a pass into turn 1 here like he did last time. They're coming up to the back of the GTE. That was Gary Mueller down up the inside. Oh, look at it. Robert balked him a little bit. I wouldn't want to say that's intentional, but he definitely did slow up on the exit of the corner there, maybe to not let Shane get a run.
And there goes Williams past the start-finish line. 2 to go. And it looks like, oh, another checkup for Robert Kanchan as he caught the back of Matt Owens. Is this going to be it? I think Hunter's got a great opportunity. It depends on how brave he is breaking into Moss Hairpin. No, he just holds back, stays on the racing line. Shane's only going to finish 8th here today. We did have a number of drivers in that class. Some of them have already retired.
Look at this run, Joe. This is the best he's gotten all day. He's already alongside. They're only halfway up the straight. Shane's got to send it in hard this time.
He's falling back.
I think Robert might have the faster car in a straight line.
He does. Shane, and maybe this is why he's having such a hard time passing. He just doesn't have enough top-end speed. As that was happening, De Vries has run down Carbonneau and taken 3rd. So back up to the podium. That is a nice recovery considering what the 89 has been through today.
And I think if Jason hadn't caught that landmine, I think he may have caught past Tinsey. He's only 10 seconds back.
White flag flies for David Williams now in the number 01. As he's got one more lap to survive. Still 30-some seconds between himself and Robert Tinsey, but as we've seen, you can't count your chickens. He has to stay out of trouble. He has to very carefully pick his way past all the traffic and hope and pray that nobody in front of him has any critical errors. As you can see, does still have to make some wild moves getting inside of Schindel down into turn 4.
It's almost like he doesn't know he has a 30-second gap, Joe.
It's the Senna way of driving. Just go 10/10 the entire time. Push, push, push. Well, I think that's the sort of mentality that is going to net him another victory. And considering the last couple rounds, the last 3 rounds have been 2 wins out of 3 and a 2nd place thrown in. 3 out of 4 rather, is not bad. David Williams takes victory here today in Canada as Paul Darling heads up next, Si.
He's coming through turn 8. He hasn't put a foot wrong all race. We barely seen him the entire race, so we're giving him some love now. Paul Darling, in his first outing in the GTE class, in the GT Pro class, comes across the line to take the victory. 1 for 1, 100% win rate. Congrats.
As Ryan Wash is going to be the next one through. This is Kanchan and Hunter, and this is still for position. They're actually ahead of Wash, so we can watch this fight here. Still looking for 7th place. Oh, this is going to be intense. They go by the very slow Bradley Haley. Looking to the inside. Is this where he finally gets the stones? He's going to try and send it. He's got a nose ahead. He's got the spot, but there's traffic in front. He just has to take it around one more corner. Slavonic in front of him. And Shane Hunter will take that 7th place as just behind Ryan Wash. What a run for this driver, who is leading the points and now takes yet another victory, his 4th this season, coming at Motorsport. That's going to take us to a quick break here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. Welcome back to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. After round 9 here in the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge, it was David Williams with yet another victory. He spent the first part of the season looking for them, and now he can't stop them from coming. Robert Tinsey finished behind him in a bit of a surprise second as Jason DeVries fell afoul of issues and unfortunately could only get himself into third. It would have been second with a challenge for the lead earlier on. It just wasn't meant to be. Luke Carbonneau was P4 with Leif Peterson in fifth. Something of a quiet race for Leif that we didn't see him a whole lot. Mark Wilson was sixth, and then a battle all the way to the line between Shane Hunter and Robert Cancian puts them seventh and eighth, respectively. The last of our finishers, despite a great qualifying and a good start to the race, Bradley Haley has to settle for P9.
In the GTEs, we have our first-time race winner, 100% win rate man, Paul Darling. First time in the car, and he's definitely showing his pace. Second place is Ross Booth. He's the winner of the 4 or 5 car tussle we had in the mid-pack. Or the front of the mid-pack, I would say, the GTE here, beating his championship rival Kevin Binkley in third. Behind them is Christopher Pies and Paul Slavonic, both of them struggling a little bit after issues on track, little small off tracks here and there. Behind them is Oliver Turcotte, Young Park, Paul Lindsay, and Gary Mueller. On to you, DJ.
Ryan Wash was able to take the win in the GTAM category. You can see Dominic Dorningberg in the GT Pros breaking that up. And on the second step of the podium for those GTAMs was Mark Schindel, followed by Ryan Robertson, who had a very, very up and down race, but was able to take a podium at the end of it. Behind him, Freddie Tinklow in his debut. Good run for Freddie to finish fourth there, followed by Joe Steifel and David Perry. Behind them, Mark Kodrowski and Chris Sherburn were then followed by Matt Owens and Jared Eaton to round out your top 10. Sean Reese came home 11th in class, followed by Eric Godot-Drapeau, who had an incident to end his race early, as well as Dale Green to round out the back of your finishers.
That will take us to our winner in the GT or the LMP2s, David Williams, your third out of 4 rounds. I'm going to get this right eventually. Here's David. That was impressive, but it looked like DeVries definitely kept you honest for this race. There was a few times he was even within striking distance. How concerned were you about that 89?
Oh, very. Jason's a hell of a driver, so you can never count him out, even though I had a little gap. And especially around here, I mean, it only takes one corner to lose a second and a half, 2 seconds. So a 2-second gap is not comfortable around here. So I was very aware of where he was, and yeah, he definitely kept me honest.
What happened between the first few races of the season and then suddenly round 6? Because now it's almost like you're unstoppable, whereas you couldn't ask for a win before.
Well, if you remember last time we spoke, last race, I mentioned my computer. In the first couple of races of the season, I was on my old computer and dealing with a lot of software issues and FPS issues. And as I mentioned before, it's very hard to race when your screen's flickering all around and you can't really see what's going on. So now that I have a computer that's stable, I can really focus on seat time and bettering myself and what I'm doing to affect the car.
The fact that we've lost Darling over to the GT Pro class, does that, you think, make it easier to set your goals, set your sights towards the championship?
Yeah, that was definitely the reasoning behind it. Not for personal championship, but for team championship, to help us compete with a satellite team. So Paul getting over there and getting a win today, congrats to him. That was kind of the plan. So him missing some races and stuff, or missing races and having some bad finishes, he was kind of out of it for this round or this series. So he's going to help us out with the team.
Great stuff. Well, congratulations, David, on yet another victory. And speaking of Paul, I do believe that Cy has caught up with our winner over in the GT Pros.
Welcome to the booth, Paul. First time in the GTE, first time winner. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling pretty good at that. Motorsport's one of my better tracks for sure, so definitely showed today, I think.
Absolutely, we could see that. You had a pretty big margin of victory here. It's not always often that we see that in the GTEs. They tend to stay pretty close throughout the entire race. What was your plan going into the race? Did you trim out the car to kind of stay ahead? We saw a lot of the, I believe it was Kevin Binkley who had trimmed out his Corvette. Did you do the same?
Yeah, Ross and I were talking about the wing angle and what we should do going in, and looking at Kevin's top speed in qualifying was absolutely insane. He was like 8 kilometers faster than me at the end of the straight. So going into the first few laps, I knew it would have to be really hard to push and pull away in the first few sectors so he wouldn't be able to come back at me on the straight.
Absolutely. Well, for DMG United, it's a pretty good points haul for you, I'd say. First in both GT Pro and LMP2. A little bit off pace in GTM, unfortunately. What are your prospects looking like for the rest of the season in both the team championships here?
Yeah, the only reason I'm in GTE is for the team championship. But so I think we've got pretty good odds. We just have to keep our cars clean the rest of the season, and might be pretty close coming to the end here.
Absolutely. We are in round 9 out of 14 at the moment. Definitely going to be a close race. You mentioned Motorsport was one of your good tracks. How are you feeling about the next race at Motegi?
That's another one I'm good at. I'm liking the schedule then.
Well, confidence is high for Paul here, guys. Right before we let you go here, is there anybody you want to thank?
I want to thank Paul Swank and Ross for helping me get up to speed on this car pretty quick. Just bought it last week, and I've learned quite a bit about the setup in the practice session today, so it was good.
Well, maybe you can expect a little bit less help at Motegi, because clearly you don't need it. That was Paul Darling, winner in the GT Pro class. Next, we have Ryan Walsh with DJ.
Well, Ryan, I would say that was a pretty quiet race for you out there, but I think with all 3 classes running around a tight little track like this, it's anything but.
Oh yeah, that was definitely. I've got a headache. Let's just put it that way. That was the quickest race I've probably been in Autobahn, but it gave me the biggest headache. There was no rest period.
Well, certainly. I mean, by the end of that race, though, your gap was just absolutely spectacular. What do you really attribute it to today? Is it just straight up lap times? Were you able to navigate some of that faster traffic better? What do you chalk that up to?
It was definitely just the way I was managing traffic. I mean, looking at my average lap time was 1:18.7, which isn't quite where I wanted it to be because I had a few run-ins with LMPs battling and then just having to back out. But yeah, it definitely came down to I was just managing the traffic especially once the GTE field started coming through. That's when I started to see that gap open up. Unfortunately, it looked like Atterbury, Santana, and one of the new faces also spun. So that always helps. I did miss my pit stall again, so that wasn't fun. But yeah, I mean, all around it was just consistency on my part, and then just kind of faster traffic being kind.
Did hear you at the end saying a little bit, I think you said something to the extent of that was a little too close for comfort or something like that. A couple of moments like that course of the race, or was that really the only one?
I mean, definitely the one at the very last lap. I had Bradley Haley and Shane Hunter coming around turn 1 at a really, really awkward position for me. It wasn't something that I encountered, so I tried to get out of the way because they were battling and they're like a tenth of a second apart, so I didn't want to mess with that. And then I ended up messing with it. Good driving on both their parts, so not to take us all out there. But there are definitely a few more close calls. I don't really recall them all. I try to have short-term memory when it comes to the race, and so yeah.
I'd say that's a pretty good strategy. Well, listen, man, congratulations on yet another win. Is there anybody you'd like to thank before we let you go tonight?
Yeah, I definitely want to thank you guys. You guys do an awesome job. I'm actually interested to see what these driver cams are like this time. And huge thanks to VRS Satellite Racing. They only brought me on, I think, a month ago. And I've already learned a lot, and hopefully I've contributed some as well. As well as I think some of our other sponsors, Moradness is one of them. So thanks to all of them.
Well, congratulations again. That was your first place finisher, Ryan Wash, in that GTM category. And now over to Joe Peak with Ross Booth.
Yes, indeed. Ross, a second place finish, but you seem to be caught up in a lot of the fun there, which was mostly for that battle for second place. We counted about 5 cars that swapped places around in there throughout the race.
Yeah, that was this is my home track. I want to have a good race, and that was the best race so far, and there've been some really good ones. Wow, I can't believe I came home second today.
Yeah, that certainly will help you. You start to catch Binkley a little bit with you finishing ahead of him. Were you actually surprised that you managed to jump him in the pit lane?
I have pretty good confidence in myself that I'm always going to have a good pit stop. So I was surprised that he was so far back after the pit stop. We were on 2 different schedules. He might have been held up in traffic where I came out in clean air, so that might have played a factor there. But we had 2 totally different aero packages on the car. He had a rocket ship down the big straightaway in the back there, and I was carving corners, so it was interesting to race behind him there.
Well, even though Binkley is the only one to have managed to finish on the podium in every race so far, and he still is continuing that record this time, you actually have all but 2 in there, which is still pretty impressive considering they're all first and seconds as well. Other than those 2 errant races, do you think you can keep that up to try and kind of hold on to his coattails and make it a fight all the way to the last of the season?
Yeah, I really think I do. I was really disappointed in myself at Watkins. I feel like I should have won that race. And I'm just going to keep putting the time in and hopefully keep getting the results. But I think I had 0x today, so I get another 2 points on him. And he had a 0 or 1 incident point, so just going to keep chipping away at him.
That's the spirit we like to hear. Well, congratulations on another second today, and hopefully we'll see you out in Japan. And then I believe we've got Cy with Luke Carbonneau, 4th place finisher here in the LMP2s. No, excuse me. We've got Mark Schindel, DJ with Schindel.
I do indeed, Mark. A good run out there for you. Looked like qualifying, you started down the order a little bit, but just a cool, calm, collected race got you way up where you needed to be.
Yeah, definitely. I did not have the pace on qualifying, which is normal. I usually qualify mid-pack. This race, pieces seemed to come together. Cars got accidents and stuff like that, but yeah, turned out well.
Most certainly. And, looking at that qualifying, it looked like it was going to be sort of a Beamer parade. Obviously, you being able to get the Ferrari up front there. Do you think there was any car advantage you had, or was it just down to your skill as a driver?
I wish I could say it was skills as a driver. I did okay, but a lot of it was just people spinning. A lot of Lamborghinis seemed to be spinning around me. I don't know what the cause of that was.
Well, all right. Well, looking ahead in the schedule, we head to Motegi next. Kind of another one of the tracks that we normally don't see a whole lot on the sim. How do you like it out there?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like it as much as I do Motorsport. It's usually a fun course. It's, like you said, not very used very often, so it's going to be interesting.
Well, we'll be watching for sure, my friend. Congratulations again, and anybody you'd like to thank tonight?
My wife for letting me sit here, basically.
I think that is the sentiment that most all iRacers give so often. Thank you again, Mark. That was your 2nd place finisher in GTM. And now we go over to Cy Andre, who is in the booth with Luke Carbonneau.
Hey, Luke, welcome to the booth. Looks like your podium just slipped out of your hands towards the end of the race there. I don't think anybody expected the pace that Jason had to catch you by about 8 seconds. What was going through your head?
Well, when I saw the 7 second and I saw that the 11 minutes remaining at the race, I knew that I was in trouble because the race was like 8/10 of second faster than me by a lap. So I knew that I needed to really push hard. And in the last corner before that, I'm entering in the last 2 laps of the race, I just clipped a little bit too much the curbs in the, I think that's the the corner before the pit entry, so I just lost the car there, and I totally give on a silver plate the last place on the podium to the race.
Well, we were talking about a lot of things in the P2 class in the booth here, but one of the main things was some of the bumps here, especially going down into the Moss hairpin. A lot of people are calling it a landmine, and Jason DeVries was one of the people who hit them. Was that in the back of your mind at all going through this race? Did you change the setup, raise the car, or anything to get around it?
Yeah, well, I hit the buzz at the entering of Moss. I really hit this place on the racetrack in the qualifying session, so I knew that in fact I just totally changed my train line to the Moss corner, so I was a little bit more wider just to be sure that I wasn't hit at this particular part of the racetrack. So yeah, it made me change the line at Moss, but at some case I knew that I didn't have the pace to be, regularly or legitimately in the top 5. So the minding was, don't try to avoid all the pieces that can bring you trouble, and just try to be the more safer, and you'll see what's going to happen at the end of the race.
And it looks like it worked. Your championship rivals ahead of you, Carter Kundinger, Billy Smith, Joshua Wolf, and Paul Darling, all finished behind you this race. So I think you're going to gain a lot of good points in the championship order here. What's your plan going into Motegi and the rest of the season?
Billy Smith, I don't even thinking about him because he's way too far ahead, but we'll see what's Motegi is going to bring. I know that I'm in a really huge fight with Carter, Joshua, and I just forgot and leave for the 6th place of the standing. So I'm just going to try to put my best and just going to try to come in a minding of just have fun and see what's going to happen, be effort to have a competitive behavior.
Well, it is unfortunate that you missed the podium, but very well done on a 4th place today, especially at Mosport with all the traffic you had. Before we let you go here, anything or anybody you want to thank?
Well, I just want to thank you guys of GSRC to doing this job. It's amazing. I love to watch the replay every Tuesday, so thank you very much. And also thanks to the SFTV TMC team and TMC Carbon with Wilson and Robert Kenshin. Thanks. Have a good evening, boys.
Have a good evening, man. And next we have Freddie Tinklow, the newcomer in Autobahn with Joe Peak.
Yes, showing up in a series that is steeped in quite a bit of talent, and having a 4th place has got to feel pretty good. Is that satisfying for you, or were you hoping for more?
Good morning. Yeah, I was hoping for a bit more after I was in P2 for a while. Sadly, I made one tiny mistake, and in the end, P2 would have been a fairy tale for the first race with Autobahn, but P4 in such a highly competitive field is more than I could have asked for. So I'm very happy.
I see you hail from the DH Club. Are you across the pond, and what hour is it for you?
Yeah, I am across the pond, and it's almost 5 o'clock in the morning.
My goodness, a real night owl. That makes this an even more impressive drive. Heading off to Motegi, though, going to be a track with quite a few more straightaways. Do you think you can maybe get up onto the podium for that one with a few more opportunities to overtake?
Well, we got to see. I'm not really sure, and I don't want to say anything which I might, yeah, I don't know. We have to see how practice goes on, and in the end, you can practice as much as you want. When you make one tiny mistake, it's all over, as we've seen today. So I'll just wait.
I think that's fair enough. Well, regardless, I'd say you impressed us here with your very first run in the series, and can't wait to see you around more.
Thank you very much.
That was Freddie Tinklow, who finished in 4th in the GT-AMS, and we're going to close things out. A big thank you, of course, once again to the Autobahn Sportscar Challenge Group for bringing us back for another season of coverage. And also, we want to thank the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts that are listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. And thanks to the team today, Sean, Cy, DJ, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com, or you can check out our social media through the outlets listed at the bottom of the screen. And if you'd like to support the channel, check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storenv.com. We keep a link in the description below. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next race, as we mentioned, is off to Japan for Motegi's road course. That'll be Monday, April 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. However, until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.